613 Commandments, Wikipedia article audio. The tradition that 613 commandments is the number of mitzvot in the Torah, began in the 3rd century CE, when Rabbi Simlai mentioned it in a sermon that is recorded in Talmud Makot 2-3b. Although there have been many attempts to codify and enumerate the commandments contained in the Torah, the most traditional enumeration is Maimonides'. The 613 commandments include positive commandments, to perform an act, and negative commandments, to abstain from certain acts. The negative commandments number 365, which coincides with the number of days in the solar year, and the positive commandments number 248, a number ascribed to the number of bones and main organs in the human body. Though the number 613 is mentioned in the Talmud, its real significance increased in later medieval rabbinic literature, including many works listing or arranged by the mitzvot. 3 types of negative commandments fall under the self-sacrificial principle Yehareg ve'al ya'aver, meaning one should let oneself be killed rather than violate it. These are murder, idolatry, and forbidden sexual relations. Significance of 613. Descent and difficulties. The 613 mitzvot have been divided also into 3 general categories: mishpatim, idot, and chikim. Mishpatim include commandments that are deemed to be self-evident, such as not to murder and not to steal. Idot commemorate important events in Jewish history. For example, the Shabbat is said to testify to the story that Hashem created the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th day and declared it holy. Chikim are commandments with no known rationale, and are perceived as pure manifestations of the divine will. Many of the mitzvot cannot be observed now, following the destruction of the Second Temple, although they still retain religious significance. According to one standard reckoning, there are 77 positive and 194 negative commandments that can be observed today, of which there are 26 commands that apply only within the land of Israel. Furthermore, there are some time-related commandments from which women are exempt. Some depend on the special status of a person in Judaism, while others apply only to men or only to women. According to the Talmud, Deuteronomy 33:04 is to be interpreted to mean that Moses transmitted the Torah from God to the Israelites. Moses commanded us the Torah as an inheritance for the community of Jacob. The Talmud notes that the Hebrew numerical value of the word Torah is 611, and combining Moses' 611 commandments with the first 2 of the 10 commandments, which were the only ones heard directly from God, adds up to 613. The Talmud attributes the number 613 to Rabbi Simlai, but other classical sages who hold this view include Rabbi Simeon ben Azai and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yassai the Galilean. It is quoted in Midrash Shemot Rabbah 33:7, Bamidbar Rabbah 13:15-16, 18:21 and Talmud Yevamot 4:7b. Many Jewish philosophical and mystical works find allusions and inspirational calculations relating to the number of commandments. Works enumerating the commandments. The tzitzit of the Talith Shal are connected to the 613 commandments by interpretation. Principal Torah commentator Rashi bases the number of knots on a gematria. The word tzitzit, in its Mishnaic spelling, has the value 600. Each tassel has 8 threads and 5 sets of knots, totaling 13. The sum of all numbers is 613. This reflects the concept that donning a garment with tzitzit reminds its wearer of all Torah commandments. Rabbinic support for the number of commandments being 613 is not without dissent and, even as the number gained acceptance, difficulties arose in elucidating the list. Some rabbis declared that this count was not an authentic tradition, or that it was not logically possible to come up with a systematic count. No early work of Jewish law or biblical commentary depended on the 613 system, and no early systems of Jewish principles of faith made acceptance of this Agada normative. The classical biblical commentator and grammarian Rabbi Abraham ibn Ezra denied that this was an authentic rabbinic tradition. Ibn Ezra writes, "Some sages enumerate 613 mitzvot in many diverse ways, but in truth there is no end to the number of mitzvot, and if we were to count only the root principles, the number of mitzvot would not reach 613. Maimonides' list. Nachmanides held that this particular counting was a matter of rabbinic controversy, and that rabbinic opinion on this is not unanimous. Nonetheless, he concedes that this total has proliferated throughout the Agadic literature. We ought to say that it was a tradition from Moses at Mount Sinai. Rabbi Simeon ben Zamaduran likewise rejected the dogma of the 613 as being the sum of the law, saying that perhaps the agreement that the number of mitzvot is 613 is just Rabbi Simlei's opinion, following his own explication of the mitzvot. And we need not rely on his explication when we come to determine the law, but rather on the Talmudic discussions. Even when rabbis attempted to compile a list of the 613 commandments, they were faced with a number of difficulties. Canonical order. Ultimately, though, the concept of 613 commandments has become accepted as normative amongst practicing Jews, and today it is still common practice to refer to the total system of commandments within the Torah as the 613 commandments, even among those who do not literally accept this count as accurate. Typical order. However, the 613 mitzvot do not constitute a formal code of present-day halakha. The most widely recognized code is the Shulchan Aruch, written by Rabbi Yosef Karo. For Sephardic Jewry, this is generally the accepted code. Ashkenazim, however, customarily follow the glosses appended to the Shulchan Aruch by Rabbi Moses E. Searles. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch of Rabbi Shlomo Gensfried is also popular among Ashkenazic Jews. Although it is often criticized, it contains an overview of the rules of Ashkenazi Jewish life according to the minhagim followed by Hungarian Jewry. This is why it is not accepted by all Ashkenazic rabbinic authorities. However, Maimonides did write his Mishneh Torah while keeping in mind all of the 613 mitzvot. There is no single definitive list that explicates the 613 commandments. Lists differ, for example, in how they interpret passages in the Torah that may be read as dealing with several cases under a single law or several separate laws. Other commandments in the Torah are restricted as one-time acts, and would not be considered as mitzvot binding on other persons. In rabbinic literature, Rishonim and later scholars composed to articulate and justify their enumeration of the commandments. The following are the 613 commandments and the source of their derivation from the Hebrew Bible as enumerated by Maimonides. Bibliography. Which statements were to be included amongst the 613 commandments? Every one of God's commands to any individual or to the entire people of Israel, would an order from God be counted as a commandment, for the purposes of such a list, if it could only be complied with in one place and time? Else, would such an order only count as a commandment if it could be followed at all times? Does counting a single commandment depend on whether it falls within one verse, even though it may contain multiple prohibitions, or should each prohibition count as a single commandment? Sefer HaMitzvot by Rabbi Saadia Gaon is the earliest extant enumeration of the 613 mitzvot. Written during the period of the Genim, Saadia's work is a simple list, Sefer HaMitzvot by Maimonides, with a commentary by Nachmanides. Maimonides employs a set of 14 rules which determine inclusion into the list. In this work, he supports his specification of each mitzvah through quotations from the Midrash Halakha and the Gemara. Nachmanides makes a number of critical points and replaces some items of the list with others, Sefer HaChinuch. This work generally follows Maimonides' reckoning of the 613 commandments. It is written in the order in which the commandments appear in the Torah rather than an arrangement by category. In addition to enumerating the commandments and giving a brief overview of relevant laws, the Sefer HaChinuch also tries to explain the philosophical reasons behind the mitzvot. It has been attributed to various authors, most commonly Rabbi Aaron Halevi of Barcelona, though its true authorship is unknown. Sefer HaMitzvot HaGadol or Smag by Rabbi Moses ben Jacob of Kusi, Sefer HaMitzvot HaKatan or Smach by Rabbi Isaac of Corbeil. This work was written in the form of a poem, divided into 7 sections and intended to be read each week. While Isaac's work is fairly short, most editions contain lengthy commentaries. Like the Chafetz Chaim's enumeration, the Smach deals only with those mitzvot applicable today, Sefer Uraim Fearing by Rabbi Eliezer of Metz, Sefer HaMitzvot by Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan. The Chafetz Chaim's work follows the reckoning of Maimonides but gives only the commandments relevant today. Notably, this listing omits commandments regarding temple service, ritual purity, sacrifices, and so on. Though the original work included only those commandments relevant in all places and at all times, later editions include agricultural laws relevant today only in the land of Israel.